as a pastor, as a leader, I get the opportunity to watch people as they transition into different aspects of their lives. And there are two people in particular that have stood out to me, not just because I've watched them grow into who they are today, but because they did it in front of people. They did it while working. They did it while serving. And I thought about how difficult that might be to become in front of people. And so we're gonna talk about people taking center stage, and I'm talking to Elder Janay Adams and Michael Perry, and I can't wait for you guys to join us for this conversation.
All right, so family, I'm glad to have y'all both with me. Been wanting to do this for some time, but didn't know what subject I wanted to do. Little known fact, Michael has been on before. It just never was aired because something happened with the footage or something.
Yeah.
But the Lord knows what he's doing. We might should do a redo of that, but we'll figure that one out later on. But that's not what you're here for today. I was trying to really figure out what was the best topic for you two, and it hit me that you all have, over the last couple of years, really grown and matured in what I would say to be some amazing ways, and you didn't have the luxury of doing it privately. I was thinking about this. I think for some of us, I think most people who grow up in church as kids, and I'm talking about kids, you don't get to live privately, right? So if you just belong to a church, anybody, like everything is happening and unfolding like before everybody's eyes. But I think once you kind of get to adulthood, that kind of simmers down and you're just a part of the congregation. Mm-hmm. I think for you guys, it's a little different. I think you became adults, maybe it simmered down for a second, but then like the Lord kind of took you on a different path, a different journey where things had to be done publicly again.
Yes.
And I think that's different as an adult than it is as a child, right? As a child, it just gets on your nerves and you just have to deal with it.
Yes.
But as an adult, I think there's all types of emotions and challenges that kind of come along with growing up in the public, growing up center stage, right? And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. We're going to see where this conversation goes. I think it's going to go some amazing places. Yeah. I want to actually start with you, Janay. Our stories, I've known you since you were about 10 years old, somewhere around there.
Long time.
Which is a long time.
Somebody
not that long.
It ain't me.
But it's a long time. Yeah. And I remember, I'm going to start with this. I remember maybe when you were about 16-ish, I remember the Lord giving me a word for you about your gift taking you all over the world. Yep. I remember that vividly. And I remember the response to that. I remember you looking at me like, okay. Yeah. Like, whatever. With like I'm gonna be respectful because of who you are, but also I'm not really receiving this word right now.
Sounds about right.
And I get it. I get that. Tell me what you think about that now.
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts about that. I think what's so funny is like, whenever people ask me about my journey, 16 is always where it changed for me. Like 16 is where I don't know, like I feel like I woke up and like I finally, like I knew God was with me. And so I think some of that, like it kind of all happened at once. And so that word coming to, I was like, whoa, I just got here. God, we just started doing this thing. And so now when I think about that, I think about how long ago that was like literally like 15 years ago, and just how much God was with me and shaped me. And when I gave him that face, the face that I gave you, over and over and over, right? Like he was still, like obviously like patient with the process. But then once I finally caught the urgency of it, like it wasn't rushed, but it was like, okay, no, God, like this is a thing. Like I need to get in step with you. And so I mean, I think about when you're 16, like it's so funny because I was telling my husband the other day, Like, I was listening to these songs. I thought I was like in love at 16. Like, I thought I had real life problems at 16. And so just to grow from literally being a child to a woman to like, and doing all of that with God, that was very nuanced work. And it's just difficult growing up being a black woman anyway. But then to then like throw in God literally giving me a new identity on top of all of that stuff, it was very nuanced work. It was very difficult. It was very hard. But it has not been, honestly, I can say now without reward. And so there's been highs, there's been lows, been everything in between, and it's still those things. But it's been a good long journey.
What was the hardest part of that?
Ooh, the hardest part was not knowing what was next. Every single time, and getting to a point where I was like, okay, God, now I got it. Like, I understand this, and then it's like, here's another layer. So you just switched up on me, right? And also practical levels, it was losing friendships. It was trying to regain friendships who understood me at every level, right? Because the friends, I literally remember I had friends at 16 and somehow had to navigate telling them, I have a relationship with God now, so I can't be friends with you, right? And you helped me through that. You helped me through a lot of that. Like, that was a weird conversation. They was looking like, girl, we got math together. What do you mean, right? And then it was like being 21 and like getting an invite to the club and be like, man, like I really want to go, but I can't. And then it was 25, and then it was getting engaged. It was just like so many different highs. It was leaving a church and joining a new church. It was everything about me that I thought I would have a grasp of my identity, and then it was like, oh, let's take a turn. I'm just navigating through those things.
Yeah, it's funny you use that word identity, and I'm gonna bring you in, Michael, because I think that as much as people have seen probably the obvious things, right, like your worship leading and now your artistry, I think everyone has seen that grow. I don't know that everybody fully maybe realizes that a lot of that was tied to your lack of identity and then finding identity. Take us through that process.
Okay, so I think that with being a young boy, a young man, like loving the Lord, loving to worship, loving to sing, a part of who I was my singing. Like that's who I was. That's who I was known for. And so like for the earlier part of my life, it's just been, like the boy that sings, the boy that can take us to like a specific place in the presence of the Lord. And that was who I was to me.
I get that.
And so like going through life, going to college, and even coming to Fresh Start, I had to realize that, wait, that's not all to who I really am. And so a lot of my process was unlearning some of the things that I've kind of like taken on that I wasn't supposed to. And I think that even now, with unlearning and learning who I am in the Lord and learning just who Michael is, was hard, but it was also rewarding and also beautiful to see. It wasn't easy. It was very hard. A lot of my moments were coming to the church, but also, in a sense, running. I was a flight.
track star.
I mean, like, I would come to the church and then, like, you wouldn't really see me because I would already be out the door, already heading home. And so now, just going through that process with the Lord, and also community is a huge thing that I've learned that kind of helped me kind of develop who I was in the Lord, and also just developed who I really am apart from worship leading, apart from artistry. So yeah.
I think it is logical to some people to pause your assignment in order to become. And I actually would say maybe in some instances there may be some truth to that, but I think in many instances the answer to your becoming is in your assignment. That as I do the will of God, as I work, as I walk in purpose, that there are things in me that are being strengthened, and there's some things in me that are falling off through the community that I am assigned to. And I think as you listen to this conversation, you can see that already happening, that there are people who are walking with people, living in the assignment that God has given to them. And while they do the work of God, God is doing a work in them. And I think that it is easy for us to run in the opposite direction or to pause all things and say that I'm not worthy of this assignment or that I'm not ready for the assignment. But I believe that when God brings you to a thing, not only does the thing need you, but you need the thing. And so I think that we have to trust God for the outcome. That God, while I am doing your work, you're also working on me, and that all of it is working together for my good and for your glory.
So, okay, let's talk about this running thing, because I think they're not identical, but they're similarities with you two.
Yeah.
You were a runner. You were a hider. Right? But you would hide in plain sight.
Absolutely.
Right? So you were present.
Yeah.
But also
Not present.
Not present.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me why that was for both of you and what brought you out of it.
So I would say in the early, so if you know me in real life, right, I still say that I'm a private person, right? So some of that is personality, but I tell people all the time, sometimes you gotta get delivered from your personality, right? So some of that is not very healthy. And so I would say now I'm in a better place with it, but I think I was so, with the conversation of identity, I think I got to a point where I was so sold on who I wanted to be, that anything that challenged or pulled me out of who I wanted to be, that's too close. Like you're not coming in, this part, I'm keeping this little part of me. This right here, I'm keeping this, right? And so I think, and I was in a lot of relationships where I dumbed myself down, where I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be the one that, even though they had the solution, I didn't want to say it. Or I didn't want to be the person that, oh, you talking again? You telling us another? And so even in those spaces where I could be the fullness of who I was so used to, my body was so used to bracing itself that that's just what I did. Like I was in a space of hiding in life, not just at church, it was at work, it was in my close friendships. And so I really had to understand that there was safety in the presence of God, but within the people of God. And a lot of that had to do with some of the places I had to walk away from, the people I had to walk away from. And from that place, like I literally crept out of the place of hiding. Like I would love to say I was just like, I'm here, everybody. But it was a very slow crawl out of the place of hiding. And even sometimes a retreat, but understanding that it was a safe space with God and with the places and the people that he was bringing me into.
Okay, I have a follow-up to that because I think I think it's easy to kind of just rush to the end of that story, but I think you talked about how you would, I guess, I don't know, I heard you, but I felt it more than heard you. Like it was like your body would tense up, right, at the thought of being pulled out of what you were in, the identity that you thought you had.
Yeah.
What made you think that was you? What made you want to be that thing, that person, versus the person you were designed to be?
That was all I ever knew. It was safe. It was, this makes sense right now. And then after seasons of God, being in one place, and then the shift will happen, like I talked about earlier, I was tired of this. Like I was tired of, all right, God, I was like, no, we got to get some stability around here. And this is where I am right now. This is where I'm comfortable with. And so comfortability and just not being willing to or trusting God for the next thing, right? I think it was just easy and comfortable and safe, and it made me feel strong. It made me feel protected to just be this is who I am. This is the space that I'm in right now, and nobody's gonna control me or manipulate me out of the place that I'm in. That's what I looked at it as, right? Very perverted view. When people really just wanted to love me out of that space, I thought they were trying to control me out of that space. It was a lot of mind games, and I would love to blame the devil, but it was me. Hello, he was in there. He was saying some stuff, right? But there were things that were already inside of me that had taken root, and just thoughts and patterns and stuff. And so, that's what kept me in that place. Yeah,
Michael, you were a self-proclaimed cave dweller. We've talked about this cave many times. Let's talk about the cave. Let's talk about how you got out of the cave.
Well, it was dark. It was lonely. Um, and I think that I've been there for so long that I've kind of just like this is all I've known. This is kind of safe for me, versus going out and confronting things that would challenge the things that were inside of me. And so I think that the cave was a place of hiding, hiding from who I know that I'm called to be, and also a place of hiding from a community that would actually challenge the things that I was struggling with, going through, battling, fighting with. And so the cave was a very long, very long journey for me, and also a place that just I felt like I couldn't get out almost because it was just. I think I put myself in that place because I wasn't sure if I was ready to face what was outside. And it took a long time for me to realize that the place that I thought was safe, the place that I thought was the place that I could just like stay for a long time,
Good. No need to apologize. Let's let's talk through what made you emotional even about talking about it.
because I was left to my thoughts. And my thoughts weren't so kind. There were thoughts of ending my life, ending everything because I felt like I just couldn't take life. I couldn't take where things were going. I couldn't take where life was going. I didn't like where life was going, and I just felt stuck all the time. And so it was difficult. It was hard. And it was kind of weird too because it's like I knew that this was no longer a place that I belonged, but at the same time, I found security in that place.
That's real.
Because no one would judge me, no one would question why I felt the way that I felt, and even like with being who I was on the outside as a worshiper, as an artist, as this person that's outgoing, that seems outgoing, is always laughing, always giggling, always like making fun of a moment, was this person that was actually scared, hesitant, filled with like thoughts, negative thoughts, low self-esteem, insecurities, battling with rejection and abandonment, and also dealing with some things from the past. And I think that was also a part of what was keeping me in that place. I think some of the things that I've dealt with in the past, some of the experiences that I've had, kind of made me go in that place and stay in that place because I didn't want to experience the things that I was experiencing before again.
Yeah.
And so, it was very, and I'm emotional because it took me a long time to get out. And I don't know if I was ever to find the community that I am in now, that I have now, I don't know if I was ever going to make it out. And I think if I had stayed there any longer, I wouldn't be here.
Wow.
So,
I don't know that we actually consider all of the factors as we look at people who are in the forefront of ministry, of business, of entertainment, I think that we see what we see and we don't process what's happening behind the scenes. And so I admire deeply people who do not allow the lights, people that do not allow the eyes to stunt their progress. That people who keep going despite the fact that people are watching me stumble, sometimes fall. But I think what's super important is that people actually see that process, that they can see that there are people who stumble, that there are people who are falling, but they're also getting back up and they're running full speed ahead to the thing, the place, the experiences that God has in store for them. And so I applaud people for their bravery by living their life openly and unapologetically before people. I think it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
So what made you, because I think you've mentioned community a few times. I think there are people who would say, well, I want that, but the fear of it is greater than my ability to come out, right? What made you finally say, no, enough, like I'm getting out of this?
Quite honestly, I believe it was the people that was consistent. It was their consistent calls. It was their consistent check-ins. It was them refusing to back down, even though I told them, hey, like, leave me alone. Stay away. Go away.
Stay away.
Don't come. You know, like, it was the consistency aspect. It was a consistency aspect that really made me, like, see something different than what I was seeing. It made me challenge the thing that I was fighting, and it made me see who I was and who I was meant to be and how that was worth salvaging, how that was worth saving. And so for me, it was the people. It was the people, and it was the people that allowed me to actually push against what was pushing against me and my freedom and my salvation, ultimately. So,
yeah, I love that. Janay, you mentioned about this desire, this personality trait that loves privacy. Do you think that's still present? Do you still love privacy?
So I will say this. I think I've changed my view a little bit. I will say that the things that I value the most in my life, I hold in high regard, and so I don't want to share that with the wrong people, right? So at first, and what I realized is I went through like a season where like social media was really terrible for me, and I had experienced a lot of like wrong through social media, and so it was like my old Instagram was like 2 pictures a year, like I did not like, and even like beyond social media, like relationships, like I could talk to you and make you think you know something about me, but you can walk away, you don't really know nothing, but I made you feel that way. I have mastered that really well, but I realized that was not serving me. And you can't build anything off of falsehood, nothing that will last. And so I still, like I said, I still hold the friendships, my marriage, the things of God. Like some of those things, all of those things I hold in very high regard. And so I do protect them, but I don't feel the need to build a wall around them anymore like I did. Because that was out of fear. It was out of fear of it being attacked, taken away, questioned, just of somebody like, of me not having it anymore. And now I know like, no, I do have these things and I can protect them, but nobody's gonna take them away from me. So definitely still value those things, but the privacy thing is like, it's a little nixed.
So I want you to go a little bit further just because I'm almost hearing people at home, right? People who think that it's okay, which I'm gonna say I think it is okay to regard privacy, right? To hold that near. How would you help someone balance the need for privacy, or the desire, I should say, the desire for privacy while walking publicly before people?
Ooh, yeah. That's really good. And so I'll talk about my experience, and I'll use my marriage for example. So if you go on my Instagram right now, you don't see any pictures of my husband, but I mention him often, right? And so I talk about being married. I talk about enjoying being married. And if you know me, you see my husband all the time. We're almost always together. And so I would say there is a difference between being private to the point where it's destructive when you don't even want to share that with the people that are close to you, right? And so if I'm like, no, Michael, you can't, like, or I won't, or I can't let my guard down in front of other people, right? If I can't have a conversation with my pastor about my marriage because I want to be so private, I think there are indicators of when your privacy is toxic, right? And so, and like I said, if it's from a place of fear, if it's from a place of just like an unhealthy place, I think that's when you know, okay, this is not just private, this is a chain. Like this is, and it's getting a little weird. And so I think that's when you know that. And I think one of the things I give myself permission to do all the time is I have permission to love my life the way that it honors God. And I believe he's calling me right now to a space to honor the things that are close to me in an up close and personal way, right? And so when I'm with my friends separately, we have a great time. When I'm with my husband, we have a great time. And I will share those stories with the world, but there are certain parts of that I can keep and hold them close to me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. So you guys, I used this word earlier, becoming, right? You are becoming. I want you to fill in that blank. What are you becoming? And I want to start with you, Michael. What are you becoming? Let me change it. Let me give you a second to think. What have you become?
I knew you were going to say that.
And what are you becoming?
I knew it.
You better know the things.
I think I've become something that I didn't think I would become. I was afraid of like being in conversations because I would stutter, or like I was fearful because I felt like I wasn't going to make sense, or like I would get to a place in a conversation and someone would just be like, "Hey, that's all right. We got it. You don't gotta talk no more." But I feel like
That's so rude.
But it's true. Like I've been in like situations where like I would be in a group setting and we'd have conversations and I would speak up, and literally like the people that I was around at the time would pretty much shut me down mid-conversation or mid-sentence. And so that would kind of like aid in me like being afraid to talk up or being afraid to speak up. And so I feel like I have become someone who's no longer afraid of speaking, who's no longer afraid of opposition. I'm someone who is also becoming someone who is assertive and someone who is sure of who he is, where he is, and also where he's going. I think that I am becoming something that I know that my mom has prayed for, and I'm becoming someone that I'm also partnering with the Holy Spirit to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That was amazing. Oh my gosh, I can't go after that. But I will say, and I hope this connects to my answer, but I just want to say this. I hope it's okay if I just talk. Okay. So lately I've been thinking about my mother's father, maternal grandfather. He was a pastor. And I think so much about how he probably prayed for someone in his family. And I can't speak for everybody else, right? But he probably prayed for somebody to love the Lord as much as he did, and to preach the gospel like he did, and to lead people like he did. And to be that, like I'm literally probably a product of his prayers. And I didn't have a very long time with him. He got sick when I was very young. So I didn't get to know him beyond being a little girl. But I think he would be so proud of the woman that I am.
That's beautiful.
And I think it's beautiful when you talk about even this idea of like privacy, right? Like a part of his prayer, right, was probably somebody who publicly lived a life that honored God.
Yeah.
And so how much am I not being a product of his prayer if I'm not all of who I'm supposed to be? But to answer the original question, I have become someone who is less fearful. I'm still human, so of course I still feel afraid. But fear had a grip on me like nothing else. Afraid to be seen, afraid to talk, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to not be enough, just afraid of everything. So definitely someone who is less fearful. And I am becoming, I hope this answers the question, but I'm becoming me. Like, this is really the
I
me
expected you to say that.
that God
Yeah.
wanted me to be. And it's mind blowing because I actually want to be this.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to be everything else. I wanted to be everybody else. I wanted to be the version of me that I cooked up in my mind. But now to be this me, to go through the changes that I have in real time, and a lot of that be public, and to be okay with it and not go kicking and screaming. I'm finally becoming the me that God has always wanted me to be.
I absolutely love that. What do you wish people knew about your process that maybe they don't know or maybe they downplay?
I got a lot of answers for this. We got time. I got the memory space. Number one. No joking. I think I wish people knew that it's still difficult.
Yeah.
Just because you do something well does not mean it's not hard for you. And I think it's so funny because I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about scriptures, and they were like, "You probably already got the scripture in your head." I said, "I actually don't. Like, I don't just like walk around with scriptures just bopping around in my head." I said, "I wish my life probably be a lot better, but it's not. That's not the way my brain works." And I think it's like it's the paradox of being gifted, right? Like there's some things that I do amazingly well, but sometimes I'm insecure. Sometimes I doubt myself, right? So just because it may come easy, it's still difficult. And I feel like this is a word of encouragement, like through my process, I was actually thinking about our church, and I think almost every single like prophet or person that has come to our church has given me a word very publicly. And they've all been in line with what God has said. And so I would say that even with those public words, some of them were very personal to me, like very, very, very personal to me, that literally like 3 people in the world knew. And then it's like, surprise, everybody knows it's on camera. Like, even though God made me public, he didn't embarrass me. And he didn't shame me. Like, there was such freedom in being covered but exposed, right? So like now, okay, everybody sees, everybody knows, right? It's exposed, but I'm still covered by God. And so I think sometimes people think of like public process or those like public type of situations and just think everything, let it all hang out, everybody's gonna know everything about you. But there's such a grace that God gives you to endure that some of those public moments. And like the beauty of it happening in real time, and it's really for his glory, right? Like the Bible talks about, like we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, right? It's so that people will see him. And so I think I want people to know wherever they are in their process, like he is with you, and he's not, whatever is being shown is not to embarrass you, but it's really so that he'll get the glory.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I want people to know that to go through the process is important for what's coming next. And I also want them to know that, like, again, like they're not alone, that they're not by themselves. And also to hone in onto what the Lord is actually trying to teach them in that process or in that journey. Because I think that, again, like whatever you're being taught or whatever you're trying to learn, whatever the Holy Spirit is trying to teach us in that process is definitely important for what the Lord is trying to take you next. And so, yeah, like I think endure the process, go through the process, because I know a lot of times people don't want to because of how challenging it is and how hard it is. But I am a product of like, hey, like going through it as challenging as it is, as hard as it is, as difficult as it is, going through the process actually shows you the importance of sticking with the Holy Spirit through that. And so,
Yeah. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
Sorry.
of course.
I would say, like, also, I think sometimes we think of public and we automatically think of, like, having a lot of relationships. But I think if you're going to be in a space where, right, like you're in the public, for lack of better terms, right, you still need people, right? And I think that's a lot of what you were talking about as a community aspect. And it doesn't have to be 100 people, it doesn't have to be 5 people, right? But you still need people. And I think sometimes we mistake public for connected, right? But there's still an element of this that you navigate through with people, right? Like, I think about, like, y'all, like, the friends I have, like, the relationship, like, I would not have been able to navigate through some of that stuff, most of that stuff, had I not had the right people connected to me. And so I think probably the bigger you get, the deeper those roots have to be with those people so that you're not going it alone, right? And of course you can't forsake the power of the Holy Spirit in a relationship with God, but definitely having those natural relationships that can undergird you when that stuff gets crazy and tough.
I think the natural question that comes from that, like, or really from the whole conversation, is how do people who are so private and hiding and all that kind of stuff, like, how do you actually... How do you forge these connections with people, right? Because I think that there are people who actually are looking for community and not getting it.
Yeah.
So what is it? What is it that you all see? How do people who didn't want the community, how did they get it?
Yeah.
And why are people who wanting community, why aren't they getting it?
Go ahead. Oh, I would say for me, the most fruitful relationships that I have now are people that have been here over time. Like, they are people similar to what Michael said. When I said no, when I closed the door, right? Like, they were graced for me. Like, they were graced, and God literally graced them through that season. I mean, hello, man of God, you been here for a long time, and I was crazy, okay? So God literally graced people for me, right? And that doesn't mean we take advantage of people. That doesn't mean we just try that grace out, see how much we can wear it down. But that means, like, some of that stuff is tested over time. Yeah. And I think people are looking for a best friend tomorrow, and it's like, we got to get some years in this thing, right? I got to see if you have to see my desire to want to come out of it. I think what probably makes those people on the other side say there's something to this is, okay, they stepped out a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I see a little bit of change, right? And so as people start to grow and develop, like, you have to be invested in your own process as well. You can't just stick with, well, hey, I'm private, this is what I'm, because that's what you get is what you're going to get, right? You got to be able to make some different choices, right? As the people who are graced for you, exercise that grace on your life. And I think I got to a place where I wanted differently. And when you want differently, you behave differently. Like, I wish there was something more complicated I could say, but as soon as I wanted different, I started acting different, and then I got what I needed. And again, that's not an overnight process. It takes time, and thank God there were still people. And I want to say this. I lost some folks along the way. There were some people who were not graced for me. It doesn't make them bad people. So I could talk about that all day. It just means that they couldn't do it anymore, right? And so God bless them if there's a time where we ever reconnect, but you take some L's in that as well, right? Everybody can't stick with you, but the folks that do, when they do, they do. And being invested like that in a person is not without reward, right? And so you do get to see, oh my gosh, like, you're so amazing on the outside of this cave. Like, you're so amazing when you stop bracing yourself. And you see the rewards and the benefits of that as they grow and develop.
Yeah, to that, I want to say, like, because I thought about that. I think that we rush the idea of community. Yes. Right? We're talking about 20 years have gone by, right? And I'm thinking about it, I was just doing the math, right? Like, I was 23 years old. Right. Wow. I was a kid, right? Yeah. And so the relationship changes, it evolves over time, right? Like, Michael, now, I don't know, you've been here about 4 or 5 years, right? At this point,
2.
No, 2. Are you crazy?
Yeah. At Fresh Start
2, we were in the public. Pandemic was over 2 years ago.
2019
to 2023. Oh my God.
Cut that out, guys.
We're gonna edit that. I'm not.
It's killing me.
Hello, let's do the math on that. That's 4 years ago, right? And so, what now isn't what was on day one, right? And I think that we don't leave room for the development of community. I think we want it now.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think if you give up too soon, you'll miss like the fruit of what was actually being cultivated. Right. Yeah.
And I think too, sorry to cut you off. I think about like natural communities. Like you don't just pop up with 35,000 houses in a place, right? Like it takes time. Like you got to survey the land, you got to get the right folks in, and some of that stuff comes and goes. Right? Communities do not stay the same. Like you said, they evolve. Some of them decay. Some of them, right? And it takes the right investor to stick around and say, I see something in this community. And that's why I say too, it's not just about what you want to take from a community. It's about what you can give to a community. Like you want to be a contributing member of society. Hello? Like it's not just about like what I can take out.
And you reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow. And that's why I talked about, right, some of those friendships that fell off for me along the way. That's a byproduct of not contributing, right? But just expecting people to take, right? But now on the other side of that, I can see, I get to contribute to this. And I get to make this better so that the next person who may be in that position, they see somebody will stick with them and be graced to deal with them through that stuff.
Love it.
That's good. That's good.
Actually.
That's good. It was good. No, it was really good.
Okay, well, God bless.
It was good.
The food done came. Glory to Jesus. So on that note, we're not gonna let it get cold. But I do want to give you guys the opportunity. Any last thoughts about this idea of being processed publicly? This idea of becoming while everybody else is watching. What do you want people to know about that?
I think becoming while everyone else is watching, it kind of gives people the opportunity to see God work. It gives them the opportunity to see Him work on like these little things that allow that kind of keep us from actually being who He called us to be. It gives them the opportunity to see His hand. It gives them the opportunity to see how powerful and how mighty He is and how able He is to do what we think is impossible. And so I think being processed in public it sounds hard, it sounds weird, it sounds difficult, but in all actuality, it's a beautiful thing for the watchers, and also for you as well. Just like for God to show forth His glory and His power.
Yeah.
I think I would say you're gonna be processed anyway, so you might as well just do it in public. I'm joking. No, I would say like stay with it. Like anything else in life, right? We lean into when we know there's a reward, right? You go to work, you know you're gonna get paid. You invest in a relationship, you know you're gonna get something out of it, right? But there is such a return on the investment of sticking with the method of God, right? And so you may be public for 10 years and then He might put you back into like the shadows, right? But I think no matter where you find yourself in that process, like it's an audience of one, right? Like there's so many people watching, but we do this for one. And so He's always, like I'm always public to Him. Yeah. Like I'm never not public when it comes to Him, whether I got 3 followers or 3,000, right? I'm always public to Him, and just be committed to that. Whatever, when the method changes, when the rhythm changes, stick with it and trust God for the outcome.
Yeah.
I don't know that we actually consider all of the factors as we look at people who are in the forefront of ministry, of business, of entertainment. I think that we see what we see and we don't process what's happening behind the scenes. And so I admire deeply people who do not allow the lights, people that do not allow the eyes to stunt their progress, that people who keep going despite the fact that people are watching me stumble, sometimes fall. But I think what's super important is that people actually see that process, that they can see that there are people who stumble, that there are people who are falling, but they're also getting back up and they're running full speed ahead to the thing, the place, the experiences that God has in store for them. And so I applaud people for their bravery by living their life openly and unapologetically before people, I think it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
I was thinking as you guys were talking, like, we rejoice about having a testimony. But I think what's greater is allowing my life to be the testimony. And I think it's hard for your life to testify if it's private.
Yeah.
Right? But I want to be a display of
Yes.
the goodness of God. I want to be a display of the glory of God. And I want to be a display of the grace of God, right? And I think that we begin to see the grace of God on somebody's life as they're being processed, right? Grace is not a moment, grace is a lifetime. And so I think we get to see that as we kind of watch other people's lives, and then we get the courage to believe that He can do it for us too. So thank you for submitting to the process. Thank you for living your life on display. And thank you for making me cry.
Thank you for sticking with me, man of God.
Hello.
I mean,
Wasn't easy.
somebody stuck with me. So that's that on that. All right, now I'm sticking with this food. So let's do it in Jesus' name. Hallelujah. Thank you for watching this episode of Talk to Me, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single thing. We'll see you next time.